Since I was young, I knew that I was destined to become the third madam of the Xie family. Shenzhi practiced Buddhism. So at the age when other girls were flying kites and playing on swings, I spent every day soaking in the Buddhist hall reciting scriptures. Shenzhi practiced martial arts and liked women with strong and resolute characters. I learned to ride horses for him, broke my leg, and didn't shed a single tear. I did everything I could to become the person he would like. Yet he fell in love with a girl who was completely different from me. The engagement couldn't be cancelled, so I turned around and married his eldest brother, who was known for being ruthless and iron-fisted. After marriage, the eldest son of the Xie family was indeed, as rumored, he kept his distance from women. Only once, when Shenzhi drunkenly blocked my doorway, Wangji shielded me behind him, looked at his younger brother with an indifferent gaze, and spoke coldly. She is now the first madam of the Xie family. What business do you have seeking your sister-in-law in the middle of the night? Shenzhi fell in love with a girl from the Kui family who ran a wonton stall at the city gate. She didn't even have a proper name because she was the third child. Everyone just called her Kui Sanyang. She had two older brothers above her, both good-for-nothings who owed some gambling debts outside and had run off to who knows where. People often came to cause trouble at Kui Sanyang's stall. She caught a cold and was harassed by debt collectors, nearly dying of illness in the heavy snow. Shenzhi paid off all the debts the Kui family owed. He also arranged good positions for her two brothers. He rescued his beloved from the mire but forgot about me alone. The matter caused a huge scandal throughout the city. Everywhere people chatted about the romantic affair of the third son of the Xie family. The legitimate daughter of the Xu family became the laughingstock of the capital. Mother was furious and demanded father go before his majesty to cancel this marriage. Father summoned me to his study, yet continued practicing his calligraphy without saying a word. I understood father's meaning. The marriage alliance between the Xu and Xi families was beneficial. There was no need to fall out over a woman. Moreover, this marriage was bestowed by the Empress Dowager at her birthday banquet. To bring this before His Majesty now would be too unseemly. What father wrote was the character for endure. I told him I would go meet the third son of the Xie family myself. Father nodded, set down his brush, turned and picked up a book from the shelf to read. The moment I stepped out of the study, I felt somewhat unwilling to accept this. I couldn't hold back and turned to ask father. The character endure has a drop of blood atop the blade. If after marriage Shenzhi treats me poorly, what should I do? Father slowly raised his head from the desk, his eyes filled with cold, killing intent, carrying a bloodthirsty chill. He said, word by word, "No one dares to bully a daughter of the Su family. You can rest assured." In the beginning, no one would have expected that Shenzhi would fall in love with a common girl who ran a street stall. The third son of the Xie family was busy with official duties and often returned to the city right at curfew. He didn't like troubling the household servants to light fires and cook late at night, so he would usually just grab a bowl of wonton at the city gate and call it a meal. At some point, this bowl of wonton had become Shenzhi's habit. Then one day, the wonton stall was gone. Shenzhi didn't think much of it at first. He waited for about a month, but the wonton stall still hadn't been set up, so he sent someone to investigate. It wasn't hard to find out. Really, everyone in the area knew, and a few casual inquiries revealed everything. The third young master of the Xie family had always been high and mighty, but for the first time he lowered his head and listened intently to the life story of a woman. He reached out his hand toward her and pulled her up. The lady boss who ran the wonton stall, I imagined she probably wouldn't discuss Buddhist scriptura with Shenzhi, nor would she ride horses with him across vast distances. But when Shenzhi returned through wind and snow late at night, a lamp would be lit inside the house, where a woman with her hair loosely pinned stood by the stove, ladling out a steaming bowl of late-night snack for him. No matter how you think about it, it is such a heartwarming scene. Zi Sanlang, Kui Sanyang, even their names match so well. I went to see Shenzhi. He was probably very busy. I waited for 2 shiken, only for a servant from his residence to say, "My master is still entertaining guests. Perhaps Miss Su could come another day." I am not one to pester endlessly. Seeing that it was still early, I told the coachman to go take a look at Kuisanyang's place. The wonton stall at the city gate had long stopped operating. Shenzhi had acquired a new shop for Kuisanyang. The shop wasn't in the most bustling part of the capital, but rather at the end of a somewhat secluded alley, with the Xie family's wealth. Keeping a canary was easy, but a canary wasn't supposed to show her face in public doing business. Shenzhi allowed her to continue doing what she wanted, and chose this quiet location he had clearly put thought into it. The shop was small, but very clean. By the time I arrived, the meal rush had passed, and there were hardly any people in the shop. Kuisanyang no longer made wontons now. The sign at the shop entrance advertised noodle soup instead. The wonton soup from the city gate would henceforth be for third Master Xie alone to enjoy. I sat in the carriage, watching through the curtain from afar as the girl rolled out dough. It was too far away, I couldn't make out the expression on her face. Only that she wore a bright red hair ribbon, her sleeves rolled up to her elbows, her movements swift and deft, very different from what I had imagined. I had heard of Kuisanyang's life story and had assumed she would have a gentle, demure appearance. The alley was quiet, and the Xie family's carriage stood out. Kuisanyang had clearly noticed me. She hesitated for a moment, wiped her hands clean, and walked over to the carriage. "May I ask if the person in the carriage is Miss Xie?" "What is it?" The person standing outside said, "I've heard young Master Xie mention you, miss. This shop was opened with silver that young Master Xie lent me. Once I've earned enough, I will pay him back." I fiddled with the Buddhist bead bracelet I always wore on my wrist, but before I could speak, the sound of galloping hooves came from behind. Shenzhi, who was supposedly attending to a guest, pulled the reins tight. His face cold and alert as he shielded Kuisanyang behind him, saying urgently, "Miss Xie, if you have any business, take it up with me." What is the point of making things difficult for a young lady? I froze, opened my mouth, and after a long pause, asked the coachman, "Did I make things difficult for her?" The coachman said, "Of course not. Since Miss arrived here, you haven't said a single word." I then asked the person with her red sleeves half rolled up, "Did I make things difficult for you?" She seemed frightened, clutching Shenzhi's sleeve, and said softly, "Gongzi, what are you doing? You've misunderstood Miss Xie." Shenzhi's complexion gradually turned pale, and a hint of shame slowly crept onto his face. I knew what Shenzhi was worried about. The Xie family was powerful. Even if I beat Kuisanyang to death in the street, no one would dare pursue the matter. But I, Xie Muyun, also have my own dignity and pride. I just wanted to come and see what kind of woman I had lost to. I am sorry Sanyang is different from you. I got carried away just now and was rude to Miss Xie. I had waited for him outside the Xie residence for a full 2 shiken. Yet when Kuisanyang was in trouble, he arrived in an instant. The sun had already tilted westward. Behind Shenzhi, a red sun was sinking down in a blaze of glory. In that moment, I suddenly thought of the decades to come. I would be caught between Shenzhi and another woman, and just because of my noble birth, everything I did would be wrong. Speaking too loudly would be overbearing. Not speaking would be using my status to pressure others. Sitting while looking at Kuisanyang would be looking down on her. Standing while looking at Kuisanyang would be lecturing her. I was trapped in the inner courtyard day after day, hoping that the husband who didn't love me would have a change of heart. I suddenly felt so pointless. Even the 8 years of liking Shenzhi felt so pointless. I once knelt before Buddha and kowtowed 3,000 times, and I once tamed a wild horse for Shenzhi. Had imagined countless times what life would be like after marrying Shenzhi. We had equally matched family backgrounds, similar interests, and a marriage agreement bestowed by the current Empress Dowager. A more perfect match couldn't be found. But in the end, it couldn't overcome the fact that Shenzhi didn't love me. I think it was at this very moment that I gave up on Shenzhi. I clenched my teeth, forcing the tears back into my eyes, and because I was trying so hard, even my voice turned sour. "Young Master Xie, do you know that the Xie family and the Xie family have a marriage agreement?" "Of course I know. It is just that this matter needs to be discussed further." I calmly interrupted him. The second son of the Xie family is already married, and daughters of the Xu family don't become concubines. So please relay this to your family's old madam." My face wore a faint smile, but my hands hidden in my sleeves couldn't stop trembling. I straightened my body as much as I could and spoke my last words to Shenzhi. "The marriage agreement cannot be cancelled. Have your elder brother come instead?" I had liked Shenzhi for so many years. The first time I met him, he was only about 6 or 7 years old back then. I accompanied my mother to Jinshan Temple to burn incense. While mother listened to the master's sermon in the front courtyard, I couldn't sit still and snuck off to play in the back courtyard. I greedily tried to pick lotus flowers from the pond, accidentally fell into the water, and a young novice monk rescued me. I was soaking wet at the time, my socks were covered in mud, and I had even lost one shoe. I was quite frightened. How strange, he was clearly wearing a young novice's robes, yet his hair was tied up. He was actually a lay disciple. His clothes were wet too, clinging tightly to his body, looking quite disheveled. The young novice slipped the Buddhist prayer beads from his wrist onto my hand, wiped the mud and sand from my face with a handkerchief, and softly told me not to be afraid. The nanny at mother's side came looking for me. In great alarm, she held me, thanked him, and hurried away. Later, mother made inquiries and found out the one who saved me was the third young master of the Xie family. When the third young master of the Xie family was born, there were strange signs in the sky. A passing cultivator said that when he turned 19, he would face a calamity in his fate. The Xie family didn't take it seriously at first, but several things that cultivator mentioned later came true one by one. The old madam of the Xie family panicked and sent the young Xie Shenzhi to the temple, asking the eminent monks to raise him. She also sought guidance from an expert to teach him martial arts, only hoping he could turn misfortune into blessing. I never believed in such things. At 6 or 7 years old, how could one possibly read Buddhist scriptura? But this concerned the third young master of the Xie family. The kind-hearted brother who saved me so gently, how could I let him fall to the great calamity of his 19th year? At an age when other young ladies were flying kites and chasing butterflies, I spent every day soaking in the Buddhist hall. I kowtowed 3,000 times before the Buddha, only praying that the third son of the Xie family would have a smooth life. Xie Shenzhi was brought back to the Xie family when he was 12 years old. On that very same day, the Empress Dowager issued a decree bestowing a marriage between the Yun and Xie families. Mother was displeased her own daughter's life was being bound so early. Little did she know. I was overjoyed. How could women of this world marry whomever they wished? Yet I was this fortunate. Shenzhi practiced martial arts. He once said that when he fulfilled his ambitions and the world was at peace, he would ride horses with his beloved and travel across the mountains and rivers. He hoped his wife would know how to ride. Actually, a young lady of the Su family had no need to learn such things. In the capital, hardly any noble ladies would bother to learn. On my hands were calluses from the reins, on my legs were bloody marks rubbed raw by the horse's belly. To learn horseback riding, I even broke my leg hearing that he liked girls with a resilient spirit. I held it in and didn't shed a single tear. Instead, it was the nanny taking care of me who cried buckets. The Buddhist bead bracelet Xie Shenzhi gave me broke once. It fell at an unfortunate moment during a temple fair, with people flowing like shuttles. I bent over searching through the crushing crowd, my white dress smudged beyond recognition. My hand stepped on several times, the skin broken. The nanny beside me saw something was wrong, forcibly picked me up, and practically dragged me back to the mansion. I went back to look for them later, but sadly, out of 18 prayer beads, I only found 12. I lost the only thing my savior gave me. Mother saw how heartbroken I was and had someone find 6 similar ones for me. They looked exactly the same, and no one else could tell the difference. Only I could spot those subtle differences at a glance. These things I had originally planned to tell Xie Shenzhi on our wedding night, but that was before. When Mother heard, I changed my mind. She was so shocked, she knocked over her teacup. "How can you marry him, the eldest son of the Xie family?" How could he be a good match? I couldn't blame Mother for reacting this way. The eldest son of the Xie family, Xie, was known for being ruthless and cruel. He was the commander of the embroidered uniform guard, a close minister of the emperor, wielding the power to patrol and arrest, and in charge of the imperial prison. And the imperial prison was a place more terrifying than death. Those targeted by the embroidered uniform guard would inevitably lose a layer of skin. No one could come out of there in one piece. Even the most powerful ministers at court feared Xie Wangji. Wangji had never married all these years. Once a woman deliberately splashed water on his clothes, trying to get close to him. But before she could even approach him, Xie Wangji dislocated her arm with a backhand. In all of the capital, he had never been seen giving any young lady a second glance, nor had he ever set foot in pleasure houses. Rumors had it that the eldest son of the Xie family simply had no interest in women moreover. Although Xie Wangji was the eldest son, he was born of a concubine. He was 10 years older than me while I was still learning to read. He was already solving cases all over the capital. So when this marriage arrangement was first made, no one had ever thought in that direction. Mother couldn't care about anything else and stared intently into my eyes. Yunner, tell Mother the truth. Did that third young master Xie say something to you? Mother has seen everything you've done over these years. If Xie Sanji did anything to you, Mother will never let him off easy. I clasped Mother's hands in return. Xie Shenzhi didn't say anything. I figured it out. He did save my life, but sadly we're not meant to be. His heart isn't with me. If I force myself to marry him, we'll only grow distant as husband and wife. Besides, I turned my head to look at Father. Besides, marrying Xie Wangji would be of great benefit to our Su family. Perhaps my gaze was too resolute. After a long silence, Father slowly said, "You've decided." "I've decided. I won't change my mind." I thought this marriage would be delayed a while longer, but the Empress Dowager suddenly fell gravely ill. To please her, the Emperor remembered a joyous matter the Empress Dowager had bestowed years ago, and after court dispersed, he specifically brought it up with Father and the old master of the Xie family. Half a month later, the Xie family sent the betrothal gifts to the Xu family. The Xie family's betrothal gifts were extremely generous, a full 64 carriers worth. The front hall couldn't hold them all, and some were even carried to the back courtyard. The maids in my courtyard were beaming with joy. 64 carriers, the highest standard. Miss, the young master truly has his heart set on you. Looking at all the bright red filling the room and courtyard, I knew clearly that Xi Wang and I were mere acquaintances at best. This was just an imperial decreed marriage, and he had no choice but to keep up appearances. I was just a bit curious about how Xi Shen ended up explaining things to his elder brother. The wedding date was set for 3 months later. I hadn't seen the third young master of the Xie family again. I heard that Kui Sanyang's 2 elder brothers, their hands itching for action, went gambling outside again, using Xie Shen's name. The gambling house didn't make things difficult for them, but they made a big show of stuffing the ice into the mouth of the stone lion at the Xie residence's gate. I don't know how this matter was resolved in the end. I only know that Kui Sanyang's noodle soup shop no longer operated. Xie Shen found her another residence to live in, with someone attending to her 3 meals a day. The moment I heard this, I felt something was off. I had only met Kui Sanyang once, and the first thing she did was talk to me about the shop's rent. Clearly she was proud and cared deeply about those rumors saying she seduced and clung to the third young master of the Xie family. To have her actually live up to those rumors and become a kept woman, I am afraid she and the third young master Xie would clash. But a pity. These matters no longer concerned me. I focused on embroidering my wedding dress. The weather is gradually warming up. The young lady of Duke Song's household has been close to me since childhood. Her birthday is coming soon, and she invited me to go to the jewelry pavilion in the south of the city to pick out some accessories. Not to mention my mother, Song Ruoxi, was also quite curious about my sudden decision to discuss marriage with Xie Wangji, the legitimate daughter of the Su family discussing marriage with the eldest son of the Xie family, though both are from the Xie family. After all, the rumors around town had always been that the Su family favored the third son of the Xie family. Along the way, Song repeatedly seemed to want to say something, but held back. Her eyes kept glancing at me. Seeing how hard she was holding it in, I couldn't help but say, "Just ask." She indeed asked that question. How should I answer? Shuld. I say Shenzhi doesn't love me, and marrying him would only torment myself. Or should I say Shi Wangji holds greater power in the court, and marrying him would greatly benefit the Xie family? After thinking for a moment, I said against my heart, "To be honest, I've admired the eldest son of the Xie family for a long time." At that moment, the Jinyue were handling a case. A group of riders galloped past swiftly. The one at the front rode a black horse, his clothes embroidered with the subtle flying fish brocade pattern, a shuchun cold blade at his waist. His face stern, his expression indifferent. It happened to be him. I went mute, my heart skipping a beat. Song seemed not to have seen clearly who had just galloped past on horseback. Dust flew everywhere, and she covered her mouth and nose, coughing lightly twice, complaining in a low voice. Out of nowhere, running into these living Yama. Don't tell me they're going to raid another household. After a pause, she recalled the topic from just now and stared at me with burning eyes. You've admired the eldest son of the Xie family for a long time. How come I didn't know about this? When did this happen? I gazed up at the sky, my mind blank as I made up lies. At the mid-autumn banquet hosted by Her Majesty the Empress last year. The eldest son of the Xie family attended. I remember Lord Xie never participated in these things. I affirmed dryly, he was there. You just forgot. In early April, I married the eldest son of the Xie family. The wedding was very grand. To say I had no regrets would be impossible. After all, I had dreamed of this day for many years. When my mother was combing my hair, I was dazed for a moment. Was there another world where Kuisanyang didn't exist, and Shenzhi and I grew old together? The firecrackers were deafening, smoke filled the air, and voices buzzed everywhere. Before getting on the bridal sedan, I misjudged my step and kicked the door pillar, nearly falling over. A hand reached out from the side and quickly steadied me. I looked to my side through the bridal veil. I could only see a blurry, indistinct figure. I thanked him quietly. It was too noisy around, and I didn't know if he heard me. Shi Wangji was born of a concubine, and his birth mother had already passed away. Among his brothers, he was the eldest, and held an important position at court, so he had separated from the Xie family early on and lived in a separate residence. But since it was a marriage, I had to return to the Xie family's main residence to meet the relatives and serve a cup of daughter-in-law's tea to old Master Xie. The red veil was lifted by the weighing rod, first revealing a pair of thin lips. Then a high nose. I raised my eyes and unexpectedly met Xie Wangji's gaze. Actually, I'd seen him many times before. Most of the time he was in a hurry, with a saber at his waist, and I could only catch a brief glimpse. Looking at him this closely and carefully, like this was truly the first time. Shenzhi was cold and aloof, but this eldest son of the Xie family, though bearing a 30% resemblance to him, had much sharper brows and eyes, probably because of being an embroidered guard, soaked in blood for too many years. There were too many people teasing around us. I blushed for no reason and gave Shi Wangji a shy smile. He was stunned for a moment, then slowly returned the smile, and the ferocity between his brows dissipated like smoke. This wedding was grand, and many guests came to observe the ceremony. I heard some guests gasp, secretly marveling at the bride's beauty. The legitimate daughter of the Xie family, raised in the palm of their hand since childhood her bearing, and Grace were no less than a princess in the imperial city. On her wedding day, she naturally should be the most radiant one. Shi Wangji led me to meet the Xie family members one by one. I followed half a step behind him, within arm's reach if he turned around. After a long while, I finally saw Shenzhi again. The third son of the Xie family even standing in a crowd. He was an elegant young master like Jade, recognizable at a single glance. The onlookers around us clearly fell silent for a moment. Rumors about me and Shenzhi occasionally circulated in the capital. Everyone was watching me, expecting me to lose my composure. They underestimated me, no matter what. I would be living with Xie Wangji from now on. How could I let anyone see me as a joke at this moment? I wore a faint smile on my face and greeted Shenzhi. My manners were impeccable, as if we were meeting for the first time. Third brother. Shenzhi's expression wasn't exactly pleasant, showing no hint of a smile. But then again, he wasn't really the type who liked to smile anyway. He called me sister-in-law. At some point, Xie Wangji had taken hold of my hand. I squeezed back even harder, and so the third young master of the Xie family and I were no longer connected. Life after marrying Xie Wangji was quite uneventful. He was busy with his duties and rarely home. All matters in the household, big and small, were left for me to handle when I was unsure about something and asked for his opinion. He would just say to do whatever I thought was best. Indeed, Xie Wangji was seldom home. I casually buried a few sunflower seeds in the soil, and by the time he returned, there was already a patch of sunflowers swaying in the wind, their crisp, tender yellow standing vibrant and full of life in the spring sun. Later on, whenever he went out on assignments, he would always hand me a small brocade pouch upon his return, filled with flower seeds from various places. The soil and water in the capital differ from other regions, so there is no guarantee they'll all survive, but I do my best to nurture them. After an entire spring passed, a patch of flower seedlings sprouted in the garden. I then set up a trellis, expecting that by next spring it would be covered with morning glories. We had never consummated our marriage. I wonder if this confirmed the rumors in the capital that he kept away from women. But I vaguely had another layer of concern. He couldn't possibly not know about the matter between me and the third son of the Xie family. I said I had let it go, but how much could others really believe that? But regarding such matters, if Xie Wangji didn't bring it up, how could I take the initiative to mention it? Xie Wangji was a very vigilant person, and he didn't like servants handling matters close to his person. Once, he had to go to the outskirts of the capital on assignment. There was a relay station 10 li outside the city. Although he wouldn't be gone for many days, he still needed to pack his belongings. I stood beside him watching him pack his clothes, and in the end, couldn't help myself. I went to find an umbrella and stuffed it into his hands, saying, "Take this with you. It is going to rain in a couple of days." He looked up, glanced at me with slight surprise, then took the umbrella 2 days later. Sure enough, a heavy rain came without warning. When Xie Wangji returned from his assignment, he mentioned that several of his subordinates had been caught in the rain, looking quite bedraggled, and ended up borrowing a farmer's eaves to shelter from the rain. "How did you know it was going to rain?" I smiled at him, eyes curved. "Guess?" Xie Wangji looked at me, a hint of curiosity in his eyes. That night I bathed before bed. The water in the tub was extremely hot, so I called for the maid to add some cool water. Xie Wangji's silhouette appeared behind the screen. "You have old injuries on your body. You should use more hot water to drive away the cold." I had never seen a man while bathing before. In my shock, I suddenly crouched down into the water. The water was too hot. I gasped, but couldn't just stand up right away. In the chaos, I seemed to hear Xie Wangji chuckle softly. When I looked up again, the area behind the screen was empty. He had already left. After that, every night when I bathed, the water was slightly hot to the touch, but not as scalding as that first time. At the end of September, Xie Wangji was seriously injured. He was carried back by his subordinates. The old imperial physician from the palace came to examine him and said if it had been 2 inches closer, it would have damaged his internal organs. Lord Xie was lucky to have survived. The smell of blood in the room was too strong, so I moved 2 pots of jasmine to the window. Afraid he might develop a fever in the middle of the night, I stayed by his side all night. When Xie Wangji woke up again, the room was filled with the fresh scent of jasmine. The first ray of morning light fell on the blanket, a pale golden color stirring warmth in one's heart. I noticed all of this because I was spacing out. I had stayed up for 2 nights straight, my head dizzy and muddled, completely unaware that Xie Wangji had already woken up. I even, in a state both lucid and confused, greeted him good morning. So silly. He didn't say anything either, just quietly looked at me. It wasn't until half a quarter hour had passed that I came to my senses, fumbling to pour him water and asking him how he felt. Shi called my name. Ayun, you've grown much more haggard. The imperial physician said Shi needed to rest quietly. Before his wound healed, he must avoid getting out of bed to walk, and must not get angry. He probably hadn't taken such a long break in many years. His subordinates didn't dare to bother him, only coming each day to report the most urgent matters, just 2 thin pages that could be read through in no time. In his idle time, he would half recline there, watching me go through the account books and manage household affairs. One day was apparently very boring. During a pause for tea, he asked me, "Back when your leg was broken, what did you do lying in bed?" I thought about it and replied, "Recited Buddhist scriptures." Ji shifted his body slightly and said, "Then recite a passage." I recited a short passage from the Avalokitesvara Suerta. After I finished, Shi asked me, "Do you really like worshipping Buddha?" I told the truth. "No, I've always found it very dull. It is just that after all these years, I've gotten used to it." Since we were already on the topic, I went ahead and brought up Shenzhi to him. Whether days are good or bad, they still pass one at a time. After all, I was going to spend the long years ahead with the eldest son of the Xie family, and I didn't want to grow distant from him over these matters. It was the first time I talked to him about his third brother learning to ride horses, studying Buddhist scriptures, searching for the pearl, all those things. Shenzhi never knew about. I never expected that in the end. I would tell them all to Shi. He listened quietly as his wife talked about another man, his expression very attentive. I said to Shi, "Actually, when I first found out about him and Kui Sanyang, I was still very resentful. Why should it be like this? All these years I desperately tried to become the person he liked, but in the end he never loved me at all. Later, I figured it out. From Shenzhi's perspective, why should he like me just because of my efforts? All these years, studying Buddhism smoothed out my temper, and learning to ride horses allowed me to travel across mountains and rivers, though it was for him. In the end, these are all skills that grew on me. When you think about it, I should actually thank him. When I was young and naive, I mistook a life-saving act of kindness for love. Now that I think about it, the third son of the Xie family is a good person. He would save anyone who fell into a mud pit. It had nothing to do with whether I was male or female, beautiful or ugly. What I fell in love with, perhaps, wasn't the third son of the Xie family, but rather the time I devoted to chasing after him. All those wasted years were just me troubling myself over nothing. By the end, there were tears at the corners of my eyes, yet also a sense of relief from finally saying it all out loud. Ji beckoned to me, calling me over. He tucked a loose strand of my hair behind my ear and said softly, "When my wounds heal, shall we go horseback riding? I am raising 2 little foals twins. When my wounds heal, they'll have grown up too. Tomorrow, I'll have someone bring them over for you to see." I looked at him with delighted surprise. Shi awkwardly turned his face away, clenched his fist, and cleared his throat lightly. It dawned on me. "Oh, is your wound hurting? I'll go check if the medicine is ready." Walking through the corridor, at the corner, there lay 2 scrolls of calligraphy and paintings, and a ginseng root. I called for the servant on duty. The young attendant was shocked. What? The third young master didn't bring them inside. Third young master? Yes, just now the third young master brought these things, saying he came to visit the first young master's injuries. I gazed outside, only to see a row of swallows flying up onto the eaves. There was no trace of the Xie family's third young master anywhere. Kui Sanyang's 2 brothers were dead. They died on the wasteland outside the gates of Jinling City. The manner of death was gruesome. Their bodies had been hacked into several pieces by countless blades. After the stone lion incident last time, the Xie family's old matriarch had spoken, ordering these 2 to get out of the capital and stop bringing shame to the Xie family. It was Shenzhi who arranged for them to go to Jinling City. The Xie family had no roots there, so Shenzhi asked friends to find them work. He hoped that without the Xie family as their big tree to lean on, they could turn over a new leaf in Jinling. but things always turn out contrary to one's wishes. After the Kui brothers arrived in Jinling, they became even worse, frequenting gambling dens and brothels, living it up. Shenji's friend was pestered endlessly by debt collectors and had written to him several times, already quite fed up. Zhang Ruoxi had a distant maternal uncle who was an official in Jinling, so she got the news early. At the end of her letter, she asked me, "What do you think if Third Lady Kui finds out about this? What will happen?" If I were Shenji, I would naturally keep it tightly under wraps. But in the end, Third Lady Kui still found out. Third Lady Kui beat the drum at the yamen to cry injustice, accusing Third Young Master Xie of hiring someone to commit murder. When this came out, the capital was in an uproar. There were many young masters in the capital who kept mistresses outside, but Shenji was the first to be bitten back and get himself thrown into trouble. Even mother wrote to me saying it was fortunate that I ended up marrying the eldest son of the Xie family. Otherwise there would never be a moment's peace. This matter might not have been done by Shenji. The Kui brothers had made quite a few enemies outside. Even if it was Shenji's doing, how could Third Lady Kui, a mere woman, bring down a young master of the Xie family? Yi asked Shi Wangji about it. He said if I wanted to know the truth, I could have the embroidered uniform guard investigate. I thought about it and said no need. The truth doesn't lie with me, but in what Third Lady Kui believes. With 2 lives between them, I am afraid things between her and Shenji cannot end well. The next time I saw Shenji was at a Xie family banquet. During the banquet, second sister-in-law got into the mood and played the chin on the spot, while I accompanied her with my xiaobai. The time I sat down, Shi Wangji had already peeled a plate of crab meat for me. Grandmother Xie watched and was quite moved. Speaking of the past, she and my grandmother were the closest of friends, but after each married and had children following their husbands around to make a living, they gradually lost touch. Who would have thought that now, in their old age, they would become in-laws through their children? Grandmother Xie fell silent and shed tears at the end, then mentioned that all her grandchildren had married, except for the youngest grandson, Shenji, who was still unwed. She urged Mother Xie to arrange a marriage for Shenji as soon as possible. Grandmother was advanced in years, and those below deliberately kept things from her, so she didn't know about Qiu Sanyang's affairs. But with all the uproar throughout the capital, which family would be willing to marry their good daughter in to become the 3rd madam of the Xie family? I heard that Mother Xie had been secretly looking at girls from other regions. By the end of the meal, everyone had their own thoughts, and the atmosphere was oppressive. Shenji only took 2 bites before making an excuse to leave. That night, when the servant came to announce that the 3rd young master was requesting to see me, I almost thought I had heard wrong. At this hour, I had already removed my hairpins and ornaments. How could I see an outside man? I sent someone out to refuse him, saying whatever it was could wait until tomorrow. But the errand boy said the 3rd young master insisted on staying. Thinking that he was family after all, perhaps there was something urgent. I dressed while sending someone to notify Shi Wangji. Shenji's face was flushed and abnormal red, clearly having gotten drunk outside after leaving the banquet. He had grown much thinner. Qiu Sanyang must have been giving him a hard time. Coming late at night was already improper, let alone like this, blocking my doorway. A maid mustered her courage to step forward and ask him to move back. Shenji lowered his gaze for a moment, then raised his head, his eyes already brimming with tears. He finally regretted it. He said in a trembling voice, "Qiu Sanyang and I merely pitied her loneliness." It seems that day when I spoke with Shi Wangjia, he must have overheard. I watched him with my hands tucked in my sleeves. "It has nothing to do with me anymore," I said. "You don't need to explain yourself to me." Shenji opened his mouth, 1,000 words to say, but in the end only a bitter, hoarse apology came out. "Sorry for what?" I once knelt before the Buddha and bowed 3,000 times to make wishes for him, and I was once cut by horse reins until I bled. But all of this was my own wishful thinking. It had nothing to do with him. I shook my head at him. "You don't owe me anything, Shenji. You don't owe me anything." Remembering that his fate held a great calamity, I had someone fetch that string of Buddhist beads from the shelf and give it to him. You saved my life back then. Although my mother did visit your residence afterward to express our gratitude, gold and silver are too vulgar to convey my heartfelt appreciation. If you ever need anything in the future, our SU family still has some influence at court, and my husband has connections outside as well. If there is anything we can help with, just say the word. I've kept this string of Buddhist beads before the Buddha for many years. I hope they will keep you safe. Shenzhi stared blankly at the bracelet, his heart feeling as if a large hand was squeezing it tightly. He smiled bitterly, his eyes filled with sourness. I'd rather you hate me. We should have. Shenzhi was about to step forward when a clear, cold voice suddenly interrupted from behind him. Third brother Zhi had been recovering from illness for so long that he always seemed relaxed and carefree. No, he stood beneath the eaves with his hands at his sides, his robes and sash fluttering in the wind. The sharp look in his eyes was intimidating, and I suddenly remembered that this man was the Jinyue commander of our great Jin, in charge of the imperial prison, with unfathomable thoughts. She is now the first madam of the Xie family. What business do you have seeking your sister-in-law in the middle of the night? Shenzhi said with bitter resentment. If I hadn't been foolish for a moment, how would this marriage have ever fallen to you? Shiji stepped in front of me, looking down at his younger brother with a warning expression, and coldly clapped his hands. The third young master is drunk. Someone come and escort him to rest. Shenzhi broke free from the attendants trying to support him, his voice nearly choking with sobs. Big brother, you were born of a concubine. When you were young, my mother treated you harshly. Whenever I did something wrong, it was always you who took the punishment for me. Mother said to have you take over this marriage, but with your power and influence today, why would you still listen to my mother? You wanted to marry Miss Su yourself, didn't you? I suddenly looked toward Shiji. He was blocking me from view, so I couldn't see his expression clearly. I only heard the mockery in his laughter. So what if I did? I should thank you, third brother. Shenzhi submitted a memorial to the emperor, requesting to be stationed at the Lingnan garrison. It wasn't uncommon for sons of noble families to earn military merit on the battlefield, but Lingnan was an exception. Lingnan's forests were deep and full of poisonous miasma. Often, before one could even fight the enemy, they'd already be buried in snake-infested swamps and fog. It was the most dangerous posting. Even the military pay there was more than double that of other places. With him going there, his fate was uncertain. Madame Xie fell gravely ill. She had only been blessed with a son when she was nearly 40, and because of a cultivator's prophecy, she had sent her youngest to a Buddhist temple, separating mother and child. After all the waiting for the child to grow up safely, he now insisted on going to Lingnan to suffer hardship. How could she bear it? I heard that after Madame Xie recovered, she blamed me, believing I was the cause of all Shenzhi's misfortunes. Counting his age, he was exactly 19 this year. It seemed to fulfill the calamity foretold in his fate. Me personal nanny privately advised me to be wary of Mother Xie, fearing she might get confused in a fit of anger and do something bad to me. I shook my head, not to mention the Su family's prominence, just speaking of the Xie family's status. Now, more than half of it is supported by Shiji, this Jinyue commander. She wouldn't dare do anything to me. One can never be too careful, but the person to watch out for isn't me. I sent 2 people to keep watch near Kiwi Sanyang's residence, so if anything happened, they could secretly provide assistance. Sure enough, news came within a few days that Kiwi Sanyang was nearly poisoned and had already been secretly sent out of the city. From then on, the world is vast, who knows where she'll go. Shi Wangji's wounds truly healed by the end of winter. He held a high position, took orders from the emperor, and had so many people under him. As soon as his wounds scabbed over, he went back to duty. The world fears the Jinyue like living Yama, but who could imagine that the commander riding past on horseback beneath his brocade robes is covered in wounds? On the first day of spring, he finally got a day off. The weather happened to be lovely, a clear washed blue sky. We decided to go to the horse grounds to see the 2 foals. One was called Salu, the other Qingjue. They had already grown up, their coats gleaming with an oily sheen under the sunlight, snorting as they nuzzled people's palms with their ears. Shi Wangji suddenly got in the mood, swung onto a horse, his whole being brimming with spirit, brows and eyes alight. He leaned forward slightly, raising an eyebrow at me. Dare to compete with me in horse riding? If it were anything else, I might have hesitated for a moment, but he said horse riding. I raised my face to look at him. What if you lose? Xi Wangji cupped his hands with a smile. I'll be at Madame Xi's disposal, my heart thundered. After we got married, Shi Wangji had called me madam many times, but that felt more like a formality, just a title, no different from calling a cat or a dog, never like now with a smile in his eyes, bold and unrestrained. I turned my face away a bit, embarrassed, and pouted slightly. Then keep your word. My robes billowed in the wind, dust flying at my side, hoofbeats like thunder. I had never ridden so fast before, even the wind hitting my face felt like a blade, yet I still gritted my teeth, gripped the horse's belly tight, and cracked the whip hard, swift as a shooting star. Shi Wangji followed close at my side, almost neck and neck with me, galloping all the way, leaving all my frustrations behind. I exhaled the stale air from my chest, feeling nothing but exhilaration. Past the last stream was the end of the horse grounds. I raised my whip and cracked it hard. The blue-gray horse neighed toward the sky and leaped over the rocky stream first. I won. Me heart was leaping with joy. I reined in the horse, turned around and rode to the upstream of the stream, calling his name loudly. Xi Wangji. What? He was also smiling, his eyes bright and sparkling, the corners of his lips curved upward. Why did you want to marry me? I am the legitimate daughter of the Xie family and have long had a marriage agreement with the Xie family. But why did you want to marry me? I want to hear it. That reason I don't know about. What exactly is it? Shi Wangji laughed heartily. I knew you'd ask this. You can't get angry once I tell you. I can't ride as well as you. If you get mad and run off, I won't be able to catch up. I held up my riding whip and swore solemnly. I won't get angry, just say it. At first, it was curiosity what kind of girl would publicly reject Shenzhi in the street. You know, Shenzhi and I have had some friction since we were young. Later on, I heard that girl say she had admired me for a long time. She was telling lies with such a straight face. Stop. You are not allowed to say any more. I was so embarrassed. I got angry and wanted to teach Shi Wangji a lesson. He was already prepared, laughing loudly, cracking his whip and spurring his horse forward. Su Miyun, do you dare to compete with me again? Compete in what? It doesn't matter what we compete in. It is just that the loser has to stay with the winner until their hair turns white. The sunlight was warm and bright. The scent of green grass filled the air. The stream reflected glittering waves, and that man sat astride his horse with long legs, a smile playing at the corner of his lips. My heart stirred, and I spurred my horse to catch up. Let's compete then. Who is afraid of who? Xi Shenzhi's perspective, it was 2 years later when Shi Shenzhi returned to the capital. By this time, the streets and alleys were buzzing about other fresh gossip, and no one mentioned his romantic affair with Kui Sanyong anymore. He returned to the manor without any trouble. After 2 years of tempering in the military, Shi Shenzhi had become darker, and his demeanor even more composed. When he left, his mother had cried and wailed, declaring that if he dared to leave, he shouldn't bother coming back. Now that he had returned, seeing her travel-worn son, how could she remember the heartless words she had said back then? He had come back to take up his post. The emperor had issued an imperial decree, appointing him as vice commander responsible for assisting with the capital's city defense. Shi Shenzhi had known long ago that this time when he returned, he would meet Su Muyun, the young lady of the Xie family who had almost become his wife. He had already thought about this matter several times on his way back. Times had changed. It was all stuff from 2 years ago when they met again. They should naturally be dignified about it. His mother had written in her letter that Su Muyun was already pregnant, and by the end of the year she would give birth. But when he actually saw Su Myun through the screen, Shenzhi still couldn't help but clench his fists. Su Myun was trimming a dwarf pine while talking to Xiaowangji, saying she had already prepared a birthday gift for the Empress Dowager's celebration in advance. With the new year approaching, she told him to socialize more with his colleagues. These were the kind of reminders only a close wife would give her husband. Xiaowangji appeared to be listening, but in reality, all his attention was on Su Myun. He stared intently at those scissors, afraid that Su Myun might accidentally hurt herself. Su Myun saw that Xiaowangji was listening absent-mindedly and stomped her foot with a haya. Xiaowangji immediately snapped back to attention and coaxed her. Shenzhi felt a moment of trance. He had personally witnessed his elder brother gouge out someone's kneecaps in the imperial prison. Shenzhi's appearance was like a knife thrust into a peaceful and beautiful painting. The painting was torn, and the dream woke up. When Su Myun saw him, she immediately put away her girlish demeanor and restored the composure and dignity befitting the head lady of the house. She exchanged pleasantries with him, greeting him politely but distantly. Not a single fault could be found. Shenzhi hated it most when she was like this. They clearly still had some history, didn't they? Although it couldn't be called wonderful. They had once discussed marriage. They almost got married. That almost was because of a girl named Kui Sanyang. He heard she had gone to Jinling now and opened a wonton stall at the city gate again. As for whether she was doing well, he didn't dare ask too much. He had originally thought he could play the hero saving the beauty, but didn't expect he couldn't endure the daily grind of life. There were always rumors saying that Kui Sanyang seduced the third young master of the Xie family. Actually, this was really unjust. With so many people eating at her wonton stall, if she wanted to seduce someone and marry into a wealthy family, she would have married long ago. Why would she need to wait until she nearly died of illness in the heavy snow? Shenzhi initially fell in love with her precisely because of her proud spirit, and in the end, he was ruined by this very same proud spirit. Once they quarreled over the matter of the Kui brothers, and Kui Sanyang made a fuss about going out to make a living again. Damn it, whose wife or concubine was always clamoring to go out and open a business. His, Shi-san's woman doing sweeping, wiping tables, and serving others outside was that appropriate. They always fought over these things. Once when the argument got heated, Kui Sanyang scratched him, leaving a bright red broken skin mark hanging on his neck. It would fade in a few days, but it also kept him from going out to see people for those few days. Shenzhi smashed a floor full of teacups. He actually didn't love Su Myun, but in that moment, he suddenly began to regret. Why didn't he just marry Su Myun? They were well matched in status, had an imperial decree for their marriage, shared the same hobbies and social circles. Su Myun knew exactly how to be a proper head wife. Damn it! Why didn't he just marry Su Myun? Shenzhi laughed miserably. He could have been so happy. So why did he hand this happiness over to his eldest brother? Shenzhi was someone who never regretted his moves, yet only on this matter. He couldn't help thinking about it again and again. This thought grew wildly in his heart, like creeping vines, especially every time he saw the two of them together as husband and wife. He'd been to his eldest brother's villa before. The household rules were strict, and the servants were always on edge. Afraid of punishment, there was no warmth to the place at all. Now that Su Myun had moved in, she was considerate to the servants. Those maids and older women worked in a much more relaxed atmosphere. At some point, a flower garden had even appeared in the courtyard, with purple morning glories climbing all over the trellis. And he'd become a laughingstock in the capital, sued in court by Kui Sanyang. Mother didn't say anything, but white hairs had appeared at her temples. Shenzhi had been bitten by a venomous insect in Lingnan once. He burned with fever for 3 days and nights before waking. When he came to, he was clutching the Buddhist prayer beads he always wore. Everyone said he was lucky to survive. Only he himself knew the truth. The Xie family's third son had already perished in that great calamity at 19.